Welcome to the Massillon City Council meeting for Monday, June 16th, 2025. We have with us tonight the following city officials.
Mayor Jamie Slutes. Here. Safety Service Director Renee Baker. Here. Law Director Justin Richard. Assistant Law Director Edmund Mack. City Engineer Alex Pitts. Here. Director of Development Ted Hernkane. Here. Income Tax Budget Director Lori Katagides-Boron. Is there anyone from administration I missed? That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item number 5 on tonight's agenda is where the public can speak on any item that appears on the agenda. And then under number 17 is where the public can speak on any item that does not appear on tonight's agenda. I want to remind everyone with a cell phone at this time to please turn it down or set it on vibrate. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Brian Huth.
Here.
Creamer.
Present.
Cunningham.
Present.
Gregg.
Here.
Harwick Smith. Lewis.
Present.
Markham.
Here.
Packley.
Here.
And Ray.
Here.
Roll call of 8 present.
Councilman Gregg.
Thank you, President Slater. I make a motion that we excuse Councilwoman Harwick Smith from tonight's meeting.
Second by Councilman Markham. Roll call, please.
Creamer.
Yes.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Gregg.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Packley.
Yes.
Ray.
Yes.
And Brian Huth.
Yes.
8 yes to excuse Councilwoman Harwick Smith.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tonight's invocation and pledge of allegiance will be handled by Councilwoman Holly Bryant Huth.
Thank you. Please join me in our Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4, reading of the journal. Madam Clerk, are the minutes of the previous meeting transcribed and open for public viewing?
Yes, they are.
Are there any additions or corrections that need to be made?
No, there are not.
If not, then the minutes stand approved as written. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Item number 5, remarks of delegations and citizens to matters on the agenda. This is the part of the agenda where the community may speak on a topic that appears on the agenda this evening. If you'd like to speak on something, please come forward, state your name, the ward you live in, the topic you wish to discuss, and please limit your comments to 4 minutes or less. Seeing none, we move forward. Item number 6, new and miscellaneous business. Councilman Lewis?
Yes, we have an additional piece of legislation that is being brought to us today. It would be ordinance number 53-2025. I'd like to make a motion that we amend the agenda, bringing ordinance number 53-2025 onto first readings.
Second by Councilman Gregg. Roll call, please.
Cunningham.
Yes.
Gregg.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Markham.
Yes.
Packley.
Yes.
Ray.
Yes.
Brian Huth.
Yes.
And Creamer.
Yes.
8 yes to amend the agenda to include ordinance number 53-2025.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Item number 7, introduction of ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance number 46-2025.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Massillon, Ohio, to enter into an agreement with William Olam of Polyconnectics Incorporated to provide an economic development grant to provide funds to assist with equipment and relocation expenses associated with the business to 240 6th Street Northwest, Massillon, Ohio.
Councilman Ray?
Thank you, President Slater. We brought this up in our committee meeting. This is covering an economic development inducement grant, obviously to help with renovations. At this time, I believe at our last committee session, there was a few council people that weren't present. So if you have any questions, or does anyone have any questions about this issue? Seeing none, I would like to waive the motions for, I would make a motion to waive the rule for 3 readings and bring ordinance number 46, 2025 forward for a vote.
Second, Councilman Gregg. Roll call for suspension, please.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Hackley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
and Cunningham.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Hackley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
and Gregg.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 46-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 47-2025.
An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Massillon, Ohio, to advertise for and receive sealed requests for qualifications, RFQ, for the city's Information Technology Support Managed Services through the Qualified Base Selection, QBS, process, to negotiate and to enter into a contract upon the approval of the Board of Control with the most qualified selected vendor, all in accordance with Sections 153.65 to 153.73 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Councilwoman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. President. As previous ordinance, we discussed this last week at the committee work session, and we had questions and answers answered. So this evening, even though it's not marked as emergency, I would like to bring it forward for a vote, and I make a motion that we waive the rules requiring 3 readings and bring ordinance number 47-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Ray. Roll call for suspension, please.
Markham,
Yes.
Hackley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
and Lewis.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Hackley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
and Markham.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 47-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 48-2025.
An ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Massillon, Ohio, to advertise for and receive sealed bids and to enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder upon approval of the Board of Control for the University Drive Southeast Improvement Project and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Packley.
Yes, this was discussed last week during our work session, and there were a few questions that were raised. And Mr. Pitts, if you would like to please come up. And,
42.
sorry?
Do you want 42?
Oh, the ordinance.
No.
Good evening, Council. Yes, so regarding the questions that were asked last week at the last work session was regarding funding, and there was a question about TIFs. We did look into it. There were 2 TIFs that could have potentially been applicable, however, they are not, that being the Start Glass TIF and the Inn at University Drive TIF. Unfortunately, we are restricted on using those dollars, and University Drive does not apply to either one of those, so.
Does anyone have any questions? Mrs.
Councilman
Creamer?
Creamer.
What specifically criteria does it not meet?
So for Inn at University Drive, or at University, the Inn at University TIF, I apologize. You can only use it on Richville Road, Nave Road intersection improvements, or the Richville Road resurfacing. So that is what it's restricted for that one. And then the Stark Glass TIF is restricted only to Nova or on the property of the Stark Glass.
So where does that specific language house, like, we have the marketplace also. So what about the marketplace, using those dollars?
Yeah, so the Marketplace TIF, I know I read that one like a year or so ago, and I know that it basically does state that we can use that. It's less restrictive than these ones, than these TIFs that we researched, but I have for example, the Inn of University TIF right here, and I basically just underlined where it states that you can only use it on Richville, Nave, and Richville Road resurfacing of those intersections. But the Marketplace TIF, I can, again, it's a little bit separate from this piece than this ordinance, but I mean, I can look that one up and present that to you as well. But that was based off of a legal opinion as well. And I remember it being a lot less restrictive than these TIFs that we were looking up on trying to utilize, so.
Yeah, because I don't recall like specific verbiage restrictions with TIFs. So this is kind of new to me on those two TIFs, but I know Marketplace we've used throughout the city. So I know there shouldn't be any restrictions on that piece. But just my opinion.
Any other questions? So hearing that, do we want to do just a first reading to wait until we can completely verify that there are any other opportunities to use TIFs for this project? I know it's going to be another 2 weeks before we could pass that, even though it has emergency language.
Councilman Lewis?
My thought process is, what's today, the 16th? So it'd actually be 3 weeks, so then we're getting into July. So my concern is, knowing from what passed is, when you start getting into July and everything, then you're running the risk of the project not even being done until next spring. By the time you get through the bid process, have somebody jump on it, and then them gearing up, you might be looking at April or May before the project gets done. Because I would imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, Alex, but, or Mr. Pitts, I apologize.
Yeah.
That typically, there's a window.
Councilman Gregg?
That would be my concern also. And then, but my other, what I also wanted to say, my opinion is, I agreed wholeheartedly with Councilwoman Creamer when she brought up the point that perhaps a TIF that was in that area could be used for that neighborhood. But since it's not, since it can't be, those that we talked about can't be used, the Marketplace is a little bit different. It's not really right there in that area. And I would think those dollars we might want to save for other projects that might be closer to the Marketplace or be larger projects that we need the additional funds for. For this particular project, we already have the funds, right? We've got to pull a little bit from the general fund, but we.
1201.
1201, right, but we have them, they're available. So my opinion would be, I'd be more inclined to go ahead, again, especially because of the timing, to go ahead with the legislation as we have it and look at using the Marketplace TIF for other projects. Thank you.
Councilman Markham?
I was just going to say that, just from reading this, it looks like we're just authorizing you to put it out for bid, and if it gets paid later, it gets paid later, but it's not going to be paid in the next 3 weeks. So we could theoretically explore other TIF options or see if there's anything else we could do to generate the funding between now and the bill actually goes out, right?
Can I interject? So there is a piece of, there is one of the ordinances using the specific funds from the 1201 account. So you are authorizing it to be paid for out of that specific account, the street.
But months down the line, once the bills start coming in on the project we put out for bid.
Right, once we receive the first payout, but I mean, at
We
that
could-
point, you can't, I mean.
But we could do
yeah.
retroactive legislation to just change the bucket that the money's coming out of, theoretically, if it's even possible.
Councilman Lewis?
I agree in a sense wholeheartedly with Ms. Creamer's thoughts or concerns. We've used Marketplace freely throughout the city. And I kind of remember when that was first broken up, its restrictions allowed for, if you could justify that the improvement provided a means of transportation to Marketplace, and since pretty much everything in Massillon leads to Marketplace, almost everything is then justified by it. I will say my one concern with the Marketplace TIF is I would actually want to see us cool off of it, because we are under $1 million in that TIF, and there is some significant roadways right in that area that I would hate to see us put ourselves in a bad situation, such as like South Erie. I know the bridge we're not necessarily responsible for, but if we in any way became responsible for any of that intersection there, things like that, I would like to actually see it build up a little bit and stop tapping it so much.
Councilman Hogsback, who?
Thank you, Mr. President. And to add on to what Ed said, I believe we just used Marketplace TIF when we approved for Lincoln Way West. So in a reciprocal fashion, since we used Marketplace to do what we needed to add for the city's input of Lincoln Way West, then the city's money should go into the Fourth Ward to replace what we took from their Marketplace TIF, so that that reciprocal fashion happens.
Councilwoman Creamer?
I just have a couple comments. I think South Erie, I checked into that for repaving, and I think I was told there's state funding for that. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. So that's taken care of. If we want to expedite this, we could have a special meeting to bring this forward, to get this funding out of the way, so there isn't a 3-week delay. You know, and why I'm pushing this is because our dollar amount that we, this year for paving is much lower than previous years. So my goal was to try to save this money, use a TIF dollar, and then use this 300,000 possibly for additional streets throughout the city. That was just my mentality on why I was pushing with TIF dollars, because, you know, our paving was, what, 1.1, 1.2, and, you know, previous years we spent over 2 million. So that was kind of like just trying to get more streets paved with this funding and use the TIF within Fourth Ward because they're in the Fourth Ward. That was my thought process with pushing this. So,
Councilman Lewis?
So the amount's about 115, right?
Sorry.
115,000 is what we're looking to appropriate?
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
That would be the piece coming under finance, I believe it's ordinance 50. So it might not be ideal, but back to what Mr. Markham was saying. In theory, and tell me if this is going to screw anything up with you, we could move forward. No one's disagreeing that a project needs to go forward. We could vote on 48. That way he has the authority and the ability to go out to bid. We can give first reading to 50, which is the actual funding piece. It doesn't handcuff you to anything. It allows you to do what you need to do now.
The only thing it would handcuff us to is that Board of Control piece, right? So when it goes to Board of Control after the council meeting, we wouldn't be able to pass it via Board of Control because we wouldn't have the funding to pass it via, which account are we taking it from? So anything, yeah, so that's the only thing that would cause a delay there. So in theory, I mean, this, realistically, I mean, if you wanted to, but I suggest I want to preface that I think it's a good idea that we just stick with the 12-on-1, but in theory, if council wanted to, you could do what Councilman Markham had stated and revoke it, but then there would have to be a new Board of Control, and I don't even know if that would even void the contract at that point.
Yep.
So there's a whole lot of new moving pieces that would end up happening there, but
Councilwoman Cunningham?
I don't know if this, thank you, Mr. President. I don't know if this is even possible, but going along what Councilman Markham said about checking out the marketplace funding, if we went ahead and did the 1201, and then we could follow up with some funds from the marketplace funding, could we put it back into the 1201 fund, or would that really mess up something?
You can't put it back in.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Lewis.
If this body is wanting to seriously consider Marketplace as the funding source, I would have two additional questions. One, I'd want to hear from legal tonight and put them on the spot. And two, I'd want to know, I don't want to put you on the hot seat, but I would want to know if anybody else from the administration would want to state any additional concerns that maybe Mr. Pitts isn't privy to speak to. So I don't know, whatever order you want to handle that, Mr. Slater. Legal and then administration?
Somebody from legal administration like to come forward and... Thank you.
Specifically, what is the university project? Because I know previously when we've looked at these, it's a stretch. So we need to know specifically what are the details, who it benefits, location, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so the University Drive resurfacing project basically goes from Nave just south and then all the way up to just south of Malone Avenue. So that entire stretch that's currently concrete, we would be milling out that concrete section and putting back asphalt essentially is what would happen. That's the extent of the project. There's no,
So I would think the argument would be that this project would provide the feeder system onto Nave, which is a major thoroughfare to the marketplace.
Yeah, so that's what the legal opinion articulated. In 2015, the city obtained a legal opinion from Squire.
I need you guys to speak in the microphone, please.
Sorry. Good, better, Dan?
Thank you.
That's the analysis, Chairman. It's in 2015, the city received a legal opinion from Squire Patton Boggs, a very reputable law firm. It said for this specific TIF, we can use it for resurfacing feeder streets that directly affect the market project, that project that's governed by this. Because every TIF has a restriction on how you can use the money, right? It's got to be able to benefit somehow directly the property that's being subject to the tax exemption. I don't know the precise details of these locations, but based on what you described, it would seem to fit within the parameters that are articulated by this legal opinion. One word of caution, this is just a lawyer's opinion. This isn't from the state auditor. Even though the state auditor has subsequently said, yeah, looks good to us, hasn't been challenged in court. This is just an opinion that we received a decade ago. So with that caveat, I think it does fit into those parameters in the historic practice of what the city's done based on this legal opinion. Does that answer the question?
And I'm not saying necessarily I'm for or against, but to the support of Ms. Creamer's point, I would say that this particular road project is probably within 1 mile of the marketplace. And it definitely dumps out to, of a neighborhood of probably what, easily 200 homes? 200 plus homes dump out onto Nave, which is definitely a feeder into that. I would like to hear from the administration as well, though, if they have any additional comments.
Mr. Hernkane?
Mr. President, members of council, Mr. Lewis, this binder is all the active city TIF ordinances. There are probably 25 or so. Every time city council passes an ordinance, there is language in the ordinance that says where and how these funds can be used. By law, the Ohio Revised Code state that they're for public infrastructure improvements, and those are many different things. But the TIFs that Mr. Pitts alluded to are specified in each ordinance as to how we can use them. A word of caution on the marketplace TIF. It's probably the oldest one we have still active. It goes back to probably 1988, 1998 or 99. It was a 30-year TIF. It's coming at the end of its life cycle. It's only going to be producing funds for the next couple years, and I think the balance is down to around $800 or $900 or so thousand dollars. Those of you that served with me on council, you know how I feel about using TIF funds outside of their stated area. The only time I did, and it does not apply in this case, is when the state would refund those dollars and they would go back into the TIF fund. There were some examples in recent years where we did use the TIF funds throughout the city, but those were funds that were reimbursed from a state grant or some other funding mechanism that replenished those funds taken from the marketplace. With Marketplace being a 30-year-old project, there will be a time when things need to be repaired down there, whether they be sanitary lines, sewer lines, water lines, any type of infrastructure improvement to that development. This is the source of funds that we want to use first and foremost when those things happen, and you know they will. I would just advise caution on trying to utilize that TIF fund. For this project, if Mr. Pitts has it budgeted, my advice would be is, and on the consultation with the mayor as well, is to please proceed as planned. Future projects obviously can be treated differently as well. But I would say the Marketplace with its end of life, we're only going to have it produce funds for a couple more years. I think we should build that up for when we need it down there.
Councilman Hollyberg, who?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hernkane, do you know how much annually we receive in revenue from that too?
I don't, but after looking at these for several years, I think it's around $100,000 to $200,000 a year, maybe.
And so this is half what we're looking
Yeah,
at here?
year to date, we've brought in 126,000. So I would assume at best, that's 50%.
Thank you.
Councilman Markham?
And then, not to throw another wrench into this, but do we know if any grants were applied for through the state or federal government for this project at all?
No, not for this project. Reason being is because I would say this is probably the second most, within my office, the second most requested street to resurface in the city, first being Warmington. I've already applied for grants for Warmington through the TID grant. It's a reimbursable grant. However, I did not apply for University just because the plans for University were not completed at that time, and just because of the sheer amount of this project, I just felt that TID would be best for Warmington. And then same with OPWC later this year. That was the plan, was to apply for Warmington for those two grants. University, no. And even then, any other grant that I could even think of applying for, we wouldn't receive funding until probably fiscal year 29 or 30, because that's how far out we are at this point in time. The last grant I submitted that we received funding for, it was about a year or two ago, and that was CMAC, and it was like 2.4 for fiscal year 29. So I felt university should probably address sooner rather than later. And we had the funds appropriated. Well, we could have the funds appropriated to pay for it outright within the 1201. So.
Councilman Packley?
No, sorry, I was just looking at my paperwork. I didn't have a question. So where are we today? Go ahead.
Go ahead. Councilman Gregg?
Thank you, President Slater. You mentioned the sheer size of this project. You're talking about the university. It's not a large project, is it? I mean,
Not comparing it to Warmington. Warmington is around $2.7 million.
okay, that's what I
University is
thought.
$3
This one's a
million.
relatively smaller project, which is another reason I thought we'd just use the funding that was set forth.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Councilman Ray?
Thank you, President Slater. I would just say, I mean, with all due respect to Councilwoman Creamer, I understand that her wanting to have the TIF set from that area to be applied to that area, so maybe moving forward in the future, we just look into whatever TIFs are in that area prior to asking for the full amount. I mean, I think that might make everybody else sit well.
Good comment.
Sounds good.
Good.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Mr. Ray, good point, that was going to raise that same point. I would like to make a motion that we waive the rules requiring 3 readings and bring order number 48-2025 for a vote.
That's second by Councilwoman Kramer. Roll call for suspension, please.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Kramer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
and Packley.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Kramer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
and Ray.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 48-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 49-2025.
An ordinance making certain appropriations from the unappropriated balance of the 1237 Economic Development Fund for the year ending December 31st, 2025.
Councilman Lewis.
Yes, this goes along with the grant that we discussed earlier. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I make a motion we suspend the rules requiring 3 readings, bring ordinance number 49-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Gregg. Roll call for suspension, please.
Kramer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Brian Huth.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
and Kramer.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 49-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 50-2025.
An ordinance making certain appropriations from the unappropriated balance of the 1201 Street Construction M&R Fund for the year ending December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Lewis.
Yes, this is the appropriation related to the project we were just discussing. Are there any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I make a motion that we suspend the rules requiring 3 readings, bring ordinance number 50-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Markham. Roll call for suspension, please.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Kramer,
Yes.
and Cunningham.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Kramer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
and Gregg.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 50-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 51-2025.
An ordinance making certain appropriations from the unappropriated balance of the 1235 Community Health Services Fund for the year ending December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Lewis.
Yes, we had Ms. Sargent here last week that was able to discuss this with us. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I make a motion that we suspend the rules requiring 3 readings, bring ordinance number 51-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Gregg. Roll call for suspension, please.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Kramer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
and Lewis.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Kramer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
and Markham.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 51-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 52-2025.
An ordinance reducing the appropriations in the 1222 Waste Management Grant Fund for the year ending December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Lewis.
Yes, if you recall, the grant that we normally receive to this account was less dollars than what we typically receive because they now have some parameters regarding recycling that no longer benefit us. So we do have to reduce the appropriations in there to reflect that change. Are there any questions or discussions this evening? Seeing none, I make a motion we suspend the rules requiring 3 readings, bringing ordinance number 52-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Markham. Roll call for suspension, please.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
and Packley.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
and Ray.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 52-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 53-2025.
An ordinance making certain appropriations from the unappropriated balance of the 1220 Foreclosure Property Administration Fund for the year ending December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Lewis.
Yes, this is the piece that we amended to have placed on. The request is for $20,000, and it is to be used for servicing contracts and supplies and materials. This is for additional dumpsters, property cleanup, and postage. Mr. Hernkane, I do have one additional question I didn't think about earlier.
Mr. President, members of council, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, just to make sure we're all on the same page, this is the account that whenever a bank forecloses on a property, they have to put $10,000 in bond, and we keep $2,000, and they get $8,000 back upon the sale, correct?
It's the same fund, but I don't think it's the same account. This account within that fund would be for when code utilizes dumpsters or other nuisance abatement or cleanups that get assessed on the taxes, and then when those tax bills are paid, those funds are remitted back to the city into this fund.
So this account then, and maybe this is more of a Lori reference as well, doesn't necessarily impact HMRP?
Not to my knowledge. That is in this fund, but
But not this account?
Correct.
That was the only thing, because when you look at that fund, it's at 54,000.
Hold on, I might have did I misspeak?
No, you were correct. It does not affect your account that you're asking for at all. That's in another fund, another account.
Okay, so HMRP, is that part of the 1220 though, that 54,000?
No.
That's a different number somewhere else?
Yes.
All right, I'm very protective of HMRP.
I would be too.
Excuse me, Lori, is this the account that we added just about maybe a month ago within this foreclosure fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. That is my only question.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody else have any other questions or discussion other than what is HMRP?
What is it?
HMRP is Housing Market Reinvestment Program. So when a bank forecloses on a property, they give us a $10,000 essentially bonded allotment. Once that property is sold, they can get up to $8,000 back as long as there are not additional fees or penalties that we have to lobby against them. We keep $1,000 for administration, so similar things like what we're talking about here, and we keep $1,000 of that to fund the Housing Market Reinvestment Program. What the Housing Market Reinvestment Program is whenever someone buys a home in a CDBG neighborhood or that one was foreclosed and they are the first purchaser after a foreclosure, they can apply to get, for the first 3 years of owning, they can apply to get their property taxes or $1,000 from the city, the lesser of the two. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I make a motion, we suspend the rules requiring 3 readings, bringing ordinance number 53-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Gregg. Roll call for suspension, please.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Brian Hoot.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
and Creamer.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 53-2025 has passed. Item number 8, unfinished business. Number 9, petitions and general communications. Item number 10, bills, accounts, and claims.
I have nothing.
Item number 11, reports from city officials.
Yes, we have the auditor's report for May of 2025.
Councilman Lewis,
I make a motion that we accept the auditor's report.
second by Councilman Gregg. Roll call, please.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
and Cunningham.
Yes.
8 yes to accept the auditor's report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mhm.
Item number 12, reports of committees. Our next work session will be Monday, June 30th, 2025, at 6:30 PM. Council is off the week of June 23rd, 2025. Item number 13, resolutions and requests of council members. Councilman Markham?
One quick thing here, since we can't talk about certain things outside of open meetings, I was wondering if anybody else has been receiving complaints about the speed tables. I've received a few phone calls as well as just other passing comments about them, especially on Lake and Bird, since those are both in my ward in part. So I was wondering if anybody else had been receiving any comments and maybe have ideas on how to approach this issue in the future.
Councilman Lewis?
I've received many comments, both positive and negative. It's a mixed bag. I would say that these speed tables are a direct response to the years of complaints that we have been receiving from citizens of speeding, particularly on Lake and West Main. And this is a reasonable measure to help do passive control of traffic, and it is implemented throughout the United States effectively. And that would be my response to people.
Councilman Brian Hoot?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Markham. I've received positive comments only, and again, because of the years of issues, and not only complaints, but accidents, and cars ending up in yards and things like that, that we don't want to have. Change is hard, but the response I've gotten is positive from my constituents.
Councilman Gregg?
Thank you, President Slater. I've received a few comments, mostly negative, but not from anybody that's actually driven over them and been down there. It's all been speculative. This is going to be crazy or whatever, and I don't know that that is. I agree 100% with Mr. Lewis that this is a reasonable measure we can take to make our city safer. Thank you.
Councilwoman Cunningham?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have received some comments, mostly have been positive, because people who drive on Lake Street and Bird do fly down there, because that's where I live up there, and I think it's a safety measure, and I'm really glad that we've got them.
Councilman Ray?
Thank you, President Slater. That's in the bottom of my ward. It's right around the corner from my house. I've traveled them a few times. I didn't have any issues. Looks like traffic didn't back up as much as I thought it would. Everyone in my ward, no one had any complaints. I thought my emails were going to be jumping, but nothing happened. So we must be doing good. Quiet is good. Thank you.
Glad to hear I'm the only person getting yelled at. A lot of the complaints aren't really even Bird, it's Lake. And most of the complaints from the people on Lake is they just can't get in or out of their driveway with where they're at because of the congestion it's creating. And what they say is they slow down and then they shoot right back up. And then also they're concerned about watching fire trucks and ambulances have to slow down instead of get where they need to be. But I think what the big issue there for those folks is really just the congestion of being able to leave their house and pull into their house during rush hour. So I don't know if maybe in the future there's a way we could help them. Although driving down Lake, you look at it and it's like, here's a driveway, here's a driveway, here's a driveway, here's a driveway, so I don't really know how we could do it better. But I was just hoping somebody else was getting yelled at, and it wasn't just me, and I wanted to get this out there before a committee of folks came to council and voiced their concerns.
Councilman Lewis?
I can tell you that one of my hopes for Lake is that I know much of the traffic because I used to do it myself, being a West Sider. We cut down Earl, we go to Lake, and we use it as a major thoroughway. Problem is, Lake is not a major thoroughway. It is a wide road through a neighborhood, and I learned a couple years ago that it is actually just as fast, if not faster, to just take Lincoln Way. And most people don't realize that. They think with all the lights that they're going to be slower. It's actually not. I actually get to work about 4 minutes faster just by taking Lincoln Way to Wales. So my hope would be that more people would reroute away from Lake, therefore easing congestion, because Lake is not built to handle the amount of, I mean, it can handle it, but that's not really the intent for it. That would be my hope. Because if those neighborhoods that are right there were only ones using Lake, we wouldn't have the issue. It's all the other people that are just passing by.
Councilman Backlund?
And I've had several negative comments on it. Some people talking about the pricing, the $80,000 for the speed tables. I've asked the question, what's the cost to install and uninstall them? I don't know what that is, so it'll be an ongoing annual fee for that. Myself personally, I hate sometimes driving over them. They're not as bad as I thought they would be, and I'll admit that publicly. But I think we all need to realize Lake is a main road, and it's probably in the top 5 busiest of our community. And primarily, that's the reason, because it has an on and off ramp, more or less, or access to Route 21, and that's what allows that. So if you really wanted to reduce that, cut off 21, which will not happen in the future. So I feel sorry for those individuals that live along Lake, and they experience these high volumes of traffic, fast cars, the sound. I lived on a very busy road back in my time in Columbus. It's not pleasant. I do feel sorry for them, but it's just how the topography and how the roadway system came out. It's a busy road. The other roads, they're neighborhood roads, and me personally see zero problem with those. Lake is it's just a busy, busy road. And we've all driven it, we all know that. And so that's it.
Mr. Mayor?
Good evening, Council. I just had a few things I wanted to say, Councilman Markham. When we did the study where we wanted to put these speed tables, we took into consideration people's driveways, intersections, manhole covers, catch basins, and things like that. So there are no speed tables in front of somebody's driveway. As far as people complaining about being able to get out of their driveways or off the side streets, I've had nothing but good comments, phone calls to my office from residents on 2nd Street, on Cooper, stating it's much easier to get out onto Lake now that the speed tables are there, instead of previously people exceeding the speed limit up and down Lake Avenue. So I just wanted to address some of those issues. I have not had any negative phone calls to my office about it. As a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. I've had numerous people call my office wanting speed tables on their streets. So I feel that they are doing exactly what we want them to do. They're slowing people down. Obviously, the police can't be on Lake Avenue or any other street for that matter 24 hours a day. So, we as council members, when I was on council, we voted to put digital speed signs up. That didn't slow people down. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, I feel like sometimes it encourages people to go faster to see how high they can get that number on the digital speed limit sign. So we put target area signs up. That's just a sign. People are ignoring those signs. So with the police not being able to be there 24 hours a day, we had to take that into consideration and take the next step to slow people down, to make sure our roads are safe, to make sure Lake Avenue is safe for not just our residents that live on Lake, but the people traveling on Lake Avenue on a daily basis. And I think they're doing exactly what I thought they would do. They're slowing people down. Let's face it, people don't like change. And when you slow people down on their daily commute, when it's going to take them an extra 2 minutes to get to work because they have to slow down to go over these speed tables, people are going to be upset. But like I said, I'm happy with them. I'm excited that the residents on Lake Avenue can feel safer that they're there, and they're doing their job. They're slowing people down. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good?
Glad it's just coming from my ward for the most part. I'm sure time heals all wounds, right?
Yes.
All right. Item number 14, call of the calendar. 15, third reading ordinances, resolutions. Item number 16, second reading ordinances, resolutions. Ordinance number 41-2025.
An ordinance making certain appropriations from the unappropriated balance of the 2202 Insurance Fund for the year ending December 31st, 2025.
Councilman Lewis?
Yes, these next two pieces, we're transferring 200,000, a little over 200,000 out of the insurance fund. We're placing it into the 1100 fund for miscellaneous services and others. I wasn't here at the initial introduction of this, but does anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments? Otherwise, I would look to move these forward. Seeing none, I make a motion to suspend the rules requiring three readings, bring ordinance number 41-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Markham. Roll call for suspension, please.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
and Gregg.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
and Lewis.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 41-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 42-2025.
An ordinance making certain transfers in the 2025 appropriations from within the 2202 Insurance Fund for the year ending December 31st, 2025.
Councilman Lewis?
Yes, it's the follow-up piece of the last piece of legislation. I would make a motion that we suspend the rules requiring three readings, bring ordinance number 42-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Gregg. Roll call for suspension, please.
Packley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
and Markham.
Yes.
Markham, I'm sorry.
Marky.
The fun-
Yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
and Packley.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 42-2025 has passed. Ordinance number 45-2025.
An ordinance authorizing the Director of Law of the City of Massillon, Ohio, to enter into a one-year agreement with the City of Canal Fulton, Ohio, for the purpose of providing prosecutorial services and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Lewis?
Yes, this is pretty standard. We've done it for numerous other communities around us. This is a contract that would go into effect retroactively to January 1st, and we are now at the end of June. I know there were some additional questions and discussion about it. However, as I stated at the work session, if we want to continue to dive into how these contracts are developed, I would think it would be best set to look at next year's and working with the law department, because we are already 6 months in and their appropriate governing bodies have already approved these agreements. With that said, are there any further discussions this evening?
Councilman Gregg?
I'll just mention that I did talk to the law department regarding this, and this current contract price is an increase over the previous years and a fair amount for the work that's being done. Thank you.
Seeing nothing else, I'd make a motion we suspend the rules requiring three readings, being ordinance number 45-2025 forward for a vote.
Second by Councilman Markham. Roll call, please, for suspension.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Packley,
Yes.
and Ray.
Yes.
8 yes for suspension.
And for passage, please.
Creamer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Hackley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Brian Huth.
Yes.
8 yes for passage.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ordinance number 45-2025 has passed. Item number 17, remarks of delegations and citizens to matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone present at this time who'd like to speak on a topic which did not appear on the agenda? If so, please come forward, state your name, the ward you live in, the topic you wish to discuss, and please limit your comments to 4 minutes or less.
Good evening, council. My name is Debbie Busby. I do not live in
I don't think that mic is on. Mm-mm.
There we
There
go.
we go.
I have a cold, so I thought it might be me. I do not live in the city of Massillon. However, I do work for the Massillon Chamber of Commerce as well as Massillon Main Street, and that's who I am representing this evening. About a year or so ago, a group of us got together on behalf of the city. I'm sure you're all familiar with Umbrella Alley in Louisville and the positive economic impact it has had on that particular community. We got together we had an alley, Postal Place. What was our Umbrella Alley? And that group was Alex Kuhn from the museum, myself, Amelia Pennell, Margie Vogt from the museum as well, and then Holly Bryan Huth from Downtown Massillon Association. And when we met, we realized that in Massillon, we have deep history of transportation. So whether it's the Russell Steam Engine, whether it's airplanes, whether it's the canal. So we realized that we could make this alley based on the history of transportation. So we spent the better part of this past year, we invited an additional person with our project, and it's John Picard, because we may have had the idea, but how do we get it out of our heads and onto the alley? So we invited John to help us, and he graciously agreed to do so. And he has created a design that is an amazing design to make an amazing use out of Postal Place for this transformation and for what we hope to be a pocket park. I'm just letting you know because I want, it's getting to the point where we are close, we have somewhat of a final design, and we're getting close to working not only with Stark Parks as well as the city of Massillon with regards to portions of the alley that we're working on an agreement with. So I thought since it's starting to get out there, people are starting to understand and hear about this particular alley, that I wanted city council to know what we're doing. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Any questions?
Thank you. I'd like to, if you would, come back to the next work session. That way, if any council members have any questions or comments, we
Sure.
can, address them at that time, if you don't mind.
I'd be happy to. I
Love
would
to
be
have
very
you.
happy
Love to
to.
have you if you would.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Councilman Brian Huth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to motion to adjourn, please.
Second by Councilman Ray. Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Lewis. Markham,
Yes.
Hackley,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Brian Huth,
Yes.
and Creamer.
Yes.
8 yes to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.